Wall Street Unplugged looks beyond the regular headlines heard on mainstream financial media to bring you unscripted interviews and breaking commentary direct from Wall Street right to you on Main Street.
What's going on out there? It's September 23rd. I'm Frank Curzio, host of the Wall Street Unplugged podcast, where I break down the headlines and tell you what's really moving these markets. So as you know, I've been pretty bullish since May. Because I've seen the amount of money our government was willing to throw at the coronavirus problem to prevent an all-out depression as businesses across every state were being forced to shut down. And this is something, an event that no business prepares for. And you talk about a decline in 75% or more in sales immediately. In other words, you're not seeing a slowdown where you're changing your business model, hiring new people, going through those ebbs and flows like most businesses do. This is something that just you can't see coming. There's no playbook. It was immediate. It was damaging. It was scary. Having to lay off, furlough employees out of nowhere when businesses were, you look at the airlines, how great they were doing. Again, no playbook for this. It's pretty crazy. So the government had to react forcefully, aggressively. Spent $6.5 trillion. $6.5 trillion included direct payments to families, $4 trillion for business loans that were pretty easy to obtain for most businesses, $50 billion in loans to the airlines, $8 billion in loans to air cargo carriers, $17 billion in loans to businesses who are critical to national security, $425 billion for the Secretary of Treasury, where they could use that cash to buy basically almost anything they want, which was bonds, in terms of backstopping risky debt, CLO market, which I was worried about. They backstopped it. It's fine. Investments, they could buy stock if they want. Well, you take the full amount of money, $6.5 trillion, is 35% of GDP, which is game-changing. So we have struggling businesses that were given a lifeline until the COVID risk would eventually die down, and we're seeing that. See, most states are open at some capacity or another, going from 20 to 50 to 70. And on the other end, we have businesses that started to thrive because of COVID, which is tech, social media, streaming, healthcare, almost anything e-commerce, Zoom, Overstock, Wayfair. You guys know all the names, Bongo, all those. Exercise equipment companies, gyms were closed. And of course, there's super low interest rates, which the Fed said at its recent meeting will stay at zero. The short-term rate will stay there for 3 years, right? I talked about yield curve control and why the Fed was definitely going to do this. So yield curve control is capping long-term yields so they don't go high, which was one of the biggest risks of the market because we have tons of debt, right? Essentially, they initiated yield curve control. They just did it on the front end of the curve. And the last time they did yield curve control was back in the 40s to fund World War II. The next 8 to 10 years, the market surged because of this policy. But now they just said, well, rates are going to stay low for at least 3 years, until we get full unemployment. Could take longer than that to 2023. So having super low rates locked in long term, a Fed's already spending trillions to backstop our economy. They're going to continue to throw trillions into this market because the divide between Wall Street and Main Street, we all know it's going to continue for many years. And now what are we seeing with COVID? The numbers are getting better every week. Say, wait a minute, I'm hearing increases. You're right. Half the states are seeing increases based on our latest data. And it's nearly a 40% increase in cases from week over week, which is around 50,000 now. But that's kind of expected, right? Schools opening back up. It's getting cold around the nation. More people are staying home. It's not about the infection rates. It's about the hospitalization rates and a death rate percentage. That's the only thing anyone should care about. And unfortunately, a lot of the media, which is all bullshit, is just going to throw headlines at you to scare the shit out of you to get page views. But if you're looking at the hospitalization rates and looking at an increase of about 14,000 new cases this week compared to next week, again, around 40% increase, the hospitalization rate actually moved lower. The death rate as a percentage has continued week after week to trend lower. Now at 2.8%. It was well over 8%. I think it's still over 6% for New York City. The people who die who catch COVID. Now, what does this mean? When I look at this data, the people catching COVID in the U.S. are young, healthy, do not have underlying conditions because we're not seeing death rate rise. We're not seeing lots of hospitalizations. So it's kind of like the flu to them. And based on low hospitalization rates and death rates, we're doing a great job right now protecting the people in the danger zone who are over 65 or who have underlying conditions. So it's very, very good news. And we're likely to get a vaccine from J&J or Pfizer by year end. So the landscape for stocks is super bullish. Might sound crazy. NASDAQ pulled back. Listen to every single trader, every single one that you know that you follow, all called the bottom, or actually the actual top, on September 2nd. Our models said it. Get out of the market. They all have the date, right? It's like they all got together in a meeting and said, okay, this is what they're going to say. It's awesome. But if you're looking at the landscape and you're looking at 6-12 months, it's super bullish. And not for all names. I mean, some high flyers trading with 50 times sales. You've seen a lot of these names pull back, like the Teslas. A couple of other ones. Apple has pulled back. You've seen a lot of great names, especially in small caps that are still down well off their highs. But they're starting to see demand come back. It's a great opportunity. It's why I've been bullish. Our portfolios have benefited. So I continue to be bullish up to now. So when it comes to the stock market, and I've told you this millions of times, the one thing we know it's bad for the stock market, bad for equities, the one word is uncertainty. I'm not usually worried about short-term problems, but this election in November is going to be a complete shit show. It's not going to be decided right away. If it takes months to determine the winner, which is a possibility, we're going to see a major pullback in stocks. And rightly so, because these candidates have different agendas. I'm not too sure, they flip-flop on what they like, don't like, what they support. But I really don't want to own fracking companies if Biden wins. But I would think alternative energy, healthcare stocks, biotech will catch a bid since these sectors almost always do well when a Democrat first takes office. So we're talking about trillions of dollars sitting idle, looking for an allocation based on who gets elected, because that's going to determine the policy. It's important to understand that. If you're not pushing an agenda, there's money that's not going to flow into certain sectors. Now, why do I suddenly feel this way? Where I'm mentioning it and I'm nervous and saying, wow, we're going to see uncertainty to the point where we could see a huge correction in stocks. And just to be clear, it's kind of the status quo here. A lot of people think the election will be crazy. We won't have a winner right away. I didn't feel this way. Now, why do I personally feel this way? It's because of the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a Supreme Court justice, which you all know by now. You know the story. Trailblazer, outspoken, liberal, did things her way. And she had a way about her that even people who were totally against her philosophy or super conservative, like the late Supreme Court Justice Scalia, who is super conservative, had a great friendship with her. They loved busting each other's balls after cases, after meetings. I mean, it's really great stories. You want to do some research and reading how they just, tore each other apart afterwards, but they were friends and they understood they had different point of views. But anyway, Ginsburg passed away last week, leaving the door open for President Trump to nominate a new Supreme Court justice. Now, to bring everyone in here who may not understand the process of hiring a Supreme Court justice or the importance of it, there's 9 Supreme Court justices, and right now it stands at 5 conservative and 4 liberal, progressive, whatever you want to call it. Ginsburg's one of those 4 liberals, and her seat needs to be replaced. So the process of replacing a Senate Court justice is approval from the president and approval from the Senate, which the Republicans happen to control both. So Trump will elect a new Supreme Court justice who's conservative. He's going to do this before the election, November 3rd. And that's going to lead to 6 conservatives and 3 progressives, which opens the door to big changes. Basically assures that the liberal agenda is going to be impossible to pass, at least, in terms of law. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and this is cool, her dying wish, according to Democrats, was that her position not be replaced until a new president is installed. That's awesome. The dying wish. Why was this so pressing? Because Ginsburg knew that the Democrats were really going to get fucked if she were to die before the November election, right? She knew that. Everybody knows that. Democrats know that. So basically, she was hoping for a Biden win, while she was alive, a Senate win, and then they can elect a liberal Supreme Court justice, right? Probably the reason why she wasn't retiring, she was very sick. But that ain't happening. Now, this is unfortunate for the Democrats. It puts them in a real shitty spot, and they know it. And how are they responding? They're protesting at Mitch McConnell's house, who's the Senate Majority Leader, the person who brings the Senate together to vote on issues. Mitch McConnell contradicted himself because this situation arose in March 2016. I'll get to that in a minute. Basically, Obama's second term, he's only going to be president for a few more months, but he tried to elect a new Supreme Court justice, Merrick Garland, to replace Judge Scalia when Scalia passed away, 2016. It didn't pass because the Republicans ran the Senate. But McConnell said, we need to wait until a new president is elected before bringing a vote to the floor. And now he's doing it differently. So Democrats are really pissed. So, hey, let's protest in front of Mitch McConnell's house. They're talking about increasing the amount of states from 50 to 52, which I thought was kind of funny. So making Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C. states where they can get 4 new Democratic senators. Get more power, more votes. Talk about getting rid of the filibuster, which requires a supermajority of 60 out of the 100 senators to vote on an issue. I mean, that wouldn't happen until next year. And if Biden won, along with the Democrats controlling, the Senate, everything. Don Lemon, CNN, says we need to blow up the entire system. Blow up the entire system. Or abolish the Electoral College altogether if Trump elects a Supreme Court justice. AOC and other Democrats talk about increasing the number of Supreme Court justices. More than 9. So they have 15, whatever it is, who knows? This way they can have more progressives. CNN guest who's on a lot, Reza Aslan, tweeted to his 300,000 followers that if the Republicans try to place Ginsburg for the election, we burn the entire fucking thing down. That's what he actually said on his Twitter account. I'm quoting. We burn the entire fucking thing down. That's what he said. If all else fails, you got Pelosi in the pocket, right? But Pelosi is going to launch another impeachment against Donald Trump, which, it's like a yearly thing now, which will eat up the Senate floor time and help delay the Supreme Court vote until after the election. The old impeachment thing. You might as well keep bringing it because even when it's bullshit and you get caught, nothing happens to you. I mean, every president's going to get impeached at least once a year going forward forever, right? Because there's no consequences. You can make up shit. You can say whatever you want. You can destroy lives. And even when you get caught, nothing happens to you. So why not? Hey, bring an impeachment. My question, what the fuck are we doing here? I mean, has our country actually come to this? If Trump elects a new Supreme Court justice, and believe me, this is going to filter down to your portfolios. The reason why I'm going over it, politics, I know, getting you guys all stirred up here. If Trump elects a new Supreme Court justice, this would be the most presidential thing he's done since becoming president. This is what 100% of every standing president would do in his shoes if they control the Senate. Obama tried to do it in 2016. Tried to elect Garland to replace Scalia when he passed away. It didn't pass because the Republicans ran the Senate. But if the Democrats ran the Senate, Garland would be a Supreme Court judge right now. Even though he would have got elected in March and it was Obama's second term. He was gone at the end of the year. The only reason why they didn't have Obama tried to push it through, Democrats tried to push it through, and it's their job to push it through. What Trump is doing is exercising the constitutional right to appoint a Supreme Court justice, which will strengthen his base heading into the election. Since there's conservatives that don't like him, I could see that. It's going to please a lot of these people. But this process is a layup. It's expected. Every president, Democrat or Republican, would do the exact same thing in his position. There's only 2 dissenters right now, the Republicans, which Republicans really don't need their votes. They have enough votes, but there's 2 dissenters, and they're going to change their mind or risk their political careers. Because when shit like this happens, and it's unfortunate, but when it happens, bases rally together. And there's never a better time to rally your base, especially with 2 months left in the election. But to be clear, this is not Trump looking to build a wall, which is controversial. It's not about Trump issuing tariffs against China and Europe, which he could do by himself without Senate, House proof, nothing. It's not about Trump saying stupid shit on Twitter. This is a president exercising his constitutional right to appoint a Supreme Court justice that will significantly strengthen his base. Again, every single president before him would and better do if they want to get reelected the exact same thing. Now, the Democrats want to impeach Trump for exercising this right or launch an impeachment against him. They're calling for more violence from the extreme left. Not all Democrats. They want to make Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. states, not because they're deserving, it's a good idea, it's simply because they just want more power. And I'll be honest, it sucks for the Democrats that Ginsburg died just before the election. It's bad luck. It also sucks she's being remembered more for the political consequences than her actual achievements right now. But to launch an impeachment when Trump is following the law, it goes to show you not just Democrats, but we see from Republicans, they're going to go through any length, legal or not legal, to maintain power because they only give a shit about themselves. And that's why this election, it's not going to be settled on November 3rd. And I didn't feel that way until last week and Ginsburg passed away. And just seeing what they're doing on TV and say, could you please honor her last wish? They don't care about her last wish. They probably did I guarantee you there's maybe one or two Democrats in the Senate that spoke to Ginsburg in the past 2 years. They don't care. Please honor her last wish. Why? So I could get more power. It's great. It's awesome. But it could take weeks. It could take months until we actually settle this. And if that's the case, you better have some dry powder because stocks are going to get nailed. And it's going to provide a great buying opportunity. I'll be there for you every step of the way and tell you about it, which I'm going to go over more detail later on. My guest, Andrew Horowitz, awesome interview. Really cover everything. So I'm fire with his picks lately. It's going to give us an amazing short in a little while. But before I get to that interview, I'm bringing in two guests today that are in studio to talk about the political implications and how it could impact your portfolio. One guest you already know, who's Daniel Creech, senior analyst at Curzio Research. The other is first-time guest Greg Yanoli, who is a political strategist for the Clinton and Obama administration. I'm just kidding. Greg is our director of copy, partner at Curzio Research. If you are an investor in my company, you'd be very happy that Greg is on board, who's responsible for a lot of the sales for our company because of how good he is and how great he is. Very good friend. And we had an interesting discussion about Ginsburg, the election, and we had different opinions. And I just thought it was very powerful. And again, this is going to help you in terms of increasing your net wealth. We're going to go, but I wanted to bring in Greg. And Greg, let's hear from you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. First time, and both are in studio. I have my whole team here this week, which is awesome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks, Frank. Happy to be here. Really exciting for me.
Well, I want to bring everyone in here because Greg is a boxer, right? He boxes, and I've been training lately, trying to fight him, and you've been ducking me, right? A little bit.
I don't know about that. I think I think it might be a little bit of you're sending me your videos and trying to taunt me a little bit, and now I showed up and I'm ready to go, and I don't know how sure you are anymore.
Yeah, I sent him videos when I'm hitting the bag and everything and saying, well, I'm ready for you, so we're going to spar. We'll get that on tape, too. It'll be quick. I don't know. Hopefully it's not quick in his favor and my favor, but it should be fun. But we were talking about, and you had some strong points when we talk about Mitch McConnell contradicting himself. I mean, why don't we talk about that? Because that's really something where it's expected, right? I mean, he's going to say one thing, and because when it's not in favor of his party, when it's in favor of his party, he's going to say something else, totally changing his mind. But they're calling him out on that, and he's on video and everything, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, so I actually went back. I mean, I obviously knew about all of this prior, but I only knew kind of the broad strokes, which was basically, he obstructed and was like, I don't care. We're not going to even allow a hearing of your guy. And his whole rationale was, there's going to be an election a year from now. And whoever that next president should be, the people should have a voice in deciding, who gets to be on the Supreme Court. It shouldn't be some lame duck president who's not going to be president again a year from now. It wasn't like it was September 23rd. We are now. It was not like it's September 23rd and the election's 40 days away. We're talking, the next president wasn't getting sworn in for nearly a year. Mm-hmm. But his whole rationale was, Obama's going to be gone. He shouldn't really be allowed to choose who the nominee is or who the justice is going to be.
And now,
so right, and so
it's
and of
great.
course now that was the rationale. Now it's obviously a complete 180. So I went back and I actually wanted to see what he had said about it because I was curious. I knew the broad strokes, but I was curious about the specifics of what he said, and this kind of tells you everything that you need to know about politics in this country and the status quo, and especially the people who are career politicians and the ones who want to stay in power, and they're all just full of shit. It's really not about there are really no guiding principles. It's really all about, as you said, staying in power, and winning for your team. Like it's a team sport, unfortunately, where we are a nation of sports lovers, and we've kind of turned politics into a team sport where it's all or nothing. So anyway, I found two very interesting quotes. The first was right around the time that all of this brouhaha was going on with Obama, and he said, the quote is, the American people are about to weigh in on who is going to be president. Again, we're talking almost a year from when he made these comments, but they're about to weigh in on who's going to be the president, and that person, whoever that may be, is who should make this appointment. Okay, so that was March of that year, March of 2016. Mm-hmm. And okay, fine, that's your reason. That's not really the reason, but we'll swallow it because we have to swallow it. Later on that same year, in a speech in Kentucky to his supporters, he said, "One of my proudest moments was when I looked Barack Obama in the eye and I said, Mr. President, you will not fill the Supreme Court vacancy."
Is that really what he said?
That's what he said.
That's
now,
great.
That tells you everything that you need to know about the state of politics in this country. One of his proudest moments, this is his own words, one of his proudest moments was not participating in the government to which he was elected. It was in obstructing it. And let's be clear about that, because this isn't like, it's a Republican Senate and it's a Democratic president, and so we're not going to approve whoever you put in front of us. They didn't even give him a hearing. Mm-hmm. So the process wasn't even honored. They could have easily just done, like a show trial for this guy, and at the end of it been like, you know what, screw you, like they did with Bork. That's something that, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but the point being, like, they didn't even honor the process, and that he was proud of not honoring the process. He was proud of that. He said it himself. One of my proudest moments. So for him to now be saying, you know what, we're united now. The reason why that we didn't do it in 2016 was because we were divided. We had a Democratic president and a Republican Senate, and the people weren't unified. And that's the reason why. And now the people are unified. We have a Republican president and a Republican Senate, and so now the people have spoken, and therefore we must go forward with whoever Trump picks. And it's a bunch of BS. It just flat out is. You can't look at the facts and argue otherwise.
And not only that, everything's on video now, YouTube. Everything gets taped. I mean, so you're seeing so many of these. It's probably why Trump got elected in the first place, because when you're outside of that, it's a lot easier to come in than when you're seeing the typical politicians that everyone's kind of sick of, that just flip-flop back and forth depending on the polls. I mean, there's so many politicians. I won't get into it because I'll get tons of emails. Feel free to send us at frankcurzioresearch.com that just are totally different people because they're supporting different agendas today only because the polls say so and they want to keep their job. So they're not true to themselves, which I hate. I'm going to stay with you before I go to Daniel here, because one of the things that you said surprised me. And you said that you think Trump is going to win in a landslide. And I said, I don't think so, because of the amount of money that is behind Biden. I mean, it's incredible, where it used to be that they hated Wall Street, the Democrats. Now they love Wall Street to death because they're getting billions of dollars from it. So it's like, if you're a Democrat, you're looking at more and more billionaires supporting them, which is kind of weird, right? It's usually the other way. Like, they used to say, don't go to billionaires. And you even look at early on with the early debates, Democratic debates, how they were just ripping apart billionaires like crazy at raising money. Now it's they're all on their side. A lot of them are.
I mean, fortunately, unfortunately, I guess it depends on your perspective. There really is no right and left anymore. Not in the traditional sense. The Democrats are not the party of the left. At least the candidates we have now. The candidates that they put forward, which is very frustrating to me, because I don't want to get too far down the political rabbit hole, but this kind of speaks to why I think Trump is going to win. I think Biden has no chance in hell of winning. There's no chance in hell of that he's going to win. And I thought that he had a very tough road to begin with, just by the fact that he was the Democratic nominee. I really think that the Democrats, they fucked it up 2 cycles in a row. I mean, they put forward a candidate in Hillary Clinton that was, everyone was, convinced that she was going to win. And to be honest, I thought she was going to win too. There were so many things that Trump said and did in the course of his running for president that, in my mind, should have disqualified him. And in maybe any other year, at any other time and place in history, would have disqualified him, but they didn't. And what did the Democrats learn from that fiasco? Absolutely nothing. They decided to put forward a candidate that is another Hillary Clinton. The thought process being so antiquated that it's ridiculous. They decide that, center, really, I don't even want to call him center left. I mean, he's center. A center Democrat would have a better chance at running against, this is going to sound crazy to call him extreme. I think he is extreme, but he's not extreme like an extremist, but he has an extreme point of view. Biden does not have any extreme points of view. Like, I don't even know what Biden is. Like, he's like, I call him warm milk. He's like that. If any of you saw Gangs in New York, Daniel Day-Lewis's character, he's taught, and it's actually very fitting because he's actually talking to Tammany in the movie. The guy who plays Tammany, he's talking to that character, and he says he's all pissed off about something, and he's like, searing his meat, barely enough so that it's like, edible. And as he's like chomping into his steak, he's talking to Tammany. He's like, "You are neither hot nor cold, and because you are lukewarm, I spew you out of my mouth." And that is exactly what Biden is. He's neither hot nor cold. He does not have an opinion of any. His running platform, the only thing of any strength that he has that he's running on is, "I'm not Trump." That's what he's running on, and that's what he's hoping will carry him through the election. Because if you look at any other issue of any sort of substance, he does not have a strong opinion. You talk about fracking, like you wouldn't want to own fracking companies if Biden were elected.
I mean, he's kind of going just on federal land and this and that,
exactly.
But if I'm a fracking company, I would be worried. I mean, I would be.
So during the the primaries, he was all on the side, like, no more fracking, no new fracking. I'm with Bernie, whatever, because that was when Bernie was pretty powerful, and I still to this day. Well, we can maybe talk about that a little bit too.
Well, you think Bernie would?
Oh, Bernie would have had a much better chance of beating Trump. He actually might have.
See, I don't think so. I think it's just too. And I respect him, and this is what we're going to bring Daniel in here. But I respect him because he truly believes, and I even believe that about Obama, where I think Obama always had a love for this country. I was never nervous about anything, in terms of safety or political policy. I disagree with some of the policies. When I look at Bernie, I disagree with a lot of the policies, but I see it like he's passionate about it to the point where he really believes that system would work, and I kind of respect that. Like, that's how I felt.
Absolutely.
Let me bring in Daniel really quick, because this is where Daniel and I disagree. And again, this is what we're doing here. This isn't everyone agreeing. We're kind of like just having a conversation about it. And that's why I wanted to tape this thing. But you don't think that Bernie is genuine, right?
No. Next question. No. That was easy. No, the other night when we were talking, when you introduced Greg, he said something that really stood out to me, and it made me really think about it. And I respect his case on the sense that I don't want to put words in your mouth, Greg. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically politics have changed, and he believed that Bernie could win because he was real authentic, a lot of authenticity with the perceived voter, and he connected really well. And I really stopped and thought about that, and he did, because the amount of excitement he got in younger voters, generations, millennials. I'm 34, so depending on where you draw that line, I could either be in that group or out of that group. But a lot of people my age were huge Bernie fans, and that's something that I couldn't wrap my head around, because I don't I have a problem.
How
with,
would you not be a Bernie fan if you are a student and he's going to remove? Oh, you don't have to pay your debt anymore. Free healthcare for everyone. I mean, that appeals to a lot.
Absolutely,
You know, people are obviously going to say, "I want that."
Absolutely.
If I don't have a job, if I didn't have a job, and I'd be voting for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, that totally makes. I mean, that's definitely what he's going after. I mean, you can get you can buy votes several different ways. You can literally pay for them, or like Bloomberg is doing in our
100
own
million.
state.
100 million he's putting
Oh
up.
my goodness, that's funny. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm talking about paying off the felons' fines and all that so they can vote. That's lately. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole either. But yeah, I mean, you can give free stuff away. I just listen. If you're at the top, I'm all for dictatorship as long as I'm in the inner circle.
Mhm.
Socialism's wonderful as long as you're at the top. You're a Bernie Sanders socialist. You're a multimillionaire, multiple houses. Hell, what's not to love about that?
Yeah.
But again, that's only for a select few. So that's what scares me. And no, I can't buy him as authentic at all. But you know, that's me.
Now,
But I do
Dave,
like how Greg made a great point the other night about how he engages people. I don't know if they would turn out to vote because millennials are lazy on
there's definitely
voting. We'll
a
see all
much
that.
more excitement there compared
Absolutely.
to Biden. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a carryover from 2016. He did a lot of good in 2016, generating emotions and getting people to go for him.
Now, Greg, before we go any further, since you had strong opinions in terms of what'd you call them? Warm milk.
Warm milk.
What's your email in case anyone wants to email you?
Greg. No, I'm happy to. I would love to have these. I love these discussions. These are my favorite kinds of discussions.
So with Bernie Sanders, Trump's going to win a landslide. You really think Bernie Sanders would have got more? I mean, maybe he gets more votes. I just think there was no shot of him winning because he would have had that. For this election, it's coming down to that middle section, right? I mean, the left and the right are going to vote the way they want to vote, no matter what you do, present any facts. They're never going to change. But that middle part is what they're fighting for. And they're going to extremes, both parties, to get that. And I don't know if Bernie appeals to that middle part where they'll, I don't know.
I'm not so sure about that. I think that Trump appeals to extremes and Bernie appeals to extremes. And I think the middles are the ones that they're not really. So let me back up a little bit. The reason why I just said that I don't think Biden has a chance in hell of winning anymore is exactly because Ginsburg died. I think he would have had a tough time of it anyway. I think what's going to happen now is everyone's going to galvanize around Trump. Even the people that wouldn't have voted for him before are going to vote for him. And I know people that voted for Trump that said, I made a mistake. I'm not going to vote for this guy again. They're going to vote for him now precisely because of this issue. They're going to galvanize around him because the bigger picture is they want someone on the Supreme Court that thinks like they do. Now, the 6-3 court, which is what it's going to be, Obamacare goes away. And there's nothing to replace that yet, right? So now you have this big hole. And we talk about, Bernie having these kind of like these fringe ideas. Universal healthcare is not a fringe idea. 66% of people would approve of universal healthcare. That's 2 and 3. That's not a majority. That's a super majority. And that's not Democrats. That's all voters. 66% of people want that. They want it. That is what the people want. So this is not like a far left fringe idea. This is not one of his ideas necessarily, but universal basic income was something that was discussed a lot during the primaries. Andrew Yang. That's not a fringe idea either. It's pretty much split. 40% want it, 40% don't, and 20% aren't really sure what the fuck it means. These are not fringe ideas. So we talk about, we talk about Bernie as if he's way off on some island somewhere and like that, no one's ever gonna go meet him there. That's not really true. And what I think it comes down to when it comes to especially a presidential election, it's not so much important with Congress, I don't think, although it should be. But with the presidential election, it really comes down to it's a little bit of policy, but it's a lot of character. It's a lot of how relatable you are.
Mitt Romney was terrible in that department.
Yes.
And
exactly.
It killed him. And you know what? When you see him, when he's not on a mic or people that talk to him, and you see him in different circles or whatever, he's cool. When he was on a mic, he was dry. It was, listen to Obama's one of the greatest public speakers I've ever seen. I mean, even you just, when he speaks, like the crowd just, it motivates them. It's almost, you see similar with Trump, but That's one thing. Yeah, you got to be charismatic. But I think that really, really, really hurt Romney.
Yes, I agree, and I think it's destroying Biden. It's destroying Tell me one person that relates in any way to Kamala Harris. One, none. I can't think. I don't even like. I mean, I can't find a single thing about her that I find authentic or interesting at all. I mean, we talked about this off air as well. I mean, 6 months ago, she was calling Joe Biden a rapist, and now she's happy to be his running mate. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous, not only on the face
but it's
of
a debate.
It's a debate.
Which means we're allowed to lie at debates and say whatever we want.
That's what it's called. It's so silly.
It just wasn't a good reason, like just saying, hey, that's what I thought, and I looked into it, and it wasn't that. It's debate.
No, you know what she said? And I kind of went back and looked at this too, because again, when you're watching these things in real time, I'm not sitting there taking notes thinking like one day I'm going to have this like deep political discussion about these particular topics necessarily. But so I went back and I watched that again. I listened to exactly what she said, and the quote was, I wrote it down. I'm not going to be able to find it, but the quote was essentially like, hey, look, you have I've known Joe for a long time. I really respect him. You have family and friends, you have like disagreements, but you find common ground or whatever, right? Okay. So let's follow that to its logical conclusion. What she's basically saying is, my Uncle Joe is a pedophile, but we're going to find common ground. That's crazy. Like if you believe in your heart that your friend / family member, in the analogy she wants to use, fondles little kids, you don't hang out with that guy, and you certainly don't go run the country with him. So it's crazy. It's crazy to me that we let them get away with it. And that's why, for as much as, I know why people who are going to vote for Biden are going to vote for Biden. It's because they hate Trump. And I guarantee you, if you ask them why, that is why. It has nothing to do with policies, because we
don't really know. I mean, the debates, obviously, before the debates, to say anything is ridiculous. It's like, it's anointing someone MVP in week 2 of NFL football. It's just, it's a complete waste. So
it's going to be very interesting, that debate.
I mean, all the debates. I have 3 debates, the vice president debate. I mean, there's a lot of debates, but, I think we're going to really learn a lot more about Biden. And I like the way it's set up, because everyone thinks he's going to do so terrible. Expectations are so low. It's kind of like Sarah Palin. I mean, expectations were so low, and she did very, very well. I mean, she did very, very well during that debate, but
it doesn't even matter what he says, though. I guarantee it doesn't even matter what he says, because you can't trust any of it. You can't trust any of it. With Trump, you can trust. You can, even if you think that he's just a bald-faced liar, you can trust the fact that he's a bald-faced liar. Like with Biden, like you just can't trust. Like he's just gonna say whatever he thinks he needs to say. Like that. I mean that's the sad truth of it. It's just the sad truth of it.
So let's get Daniel back in here before I start getting the hate mail from that. It's great. But this is an interesting conversation. There's a reason why, guys. We're going to bring this all together in a minute. But so Daniel, Greg thinks that Trump is going to win in a landslide. I disagree. I think it's going to be a lot closer than that. And I think it's going to go on for a while where they're counting this votes. And if that's true, if it goes on for weeks and months, it is going to impact stocks. There's going to be uncertainty, and there's going to be money on the sideline. Again, it's going to impact different industries no matter who wins, what side you're on. But your opinions here, which I love, is say if Biden wins, and right now it's showing that Biden's going to win right now. It's definitely closer in a lot of states, but right now, based on the polls, and we know what the polls did last time and it didn't work too well for Hillary, that Biden's going to win and the Democrats are going to control the Senate as of right now. So that means they'll control everything, including the House. And that scares you a little bit, huh?
Oh, yeah. Frightening, Frank, frightening. And it's because of what you said earlier. I like Greg's point on you can't, they say anything to get elected, but you have to pay attention to what they're saying. And if they take everything, I have no doubt that they would do Washington and Puerto Rico to get 2 more senators, or 4, 2 apiece. Mm-hmm. And that would basically, you talk about macro, big picture stuff here. So let's say the Supreme Court justice goes through. So it goes 6-3 conservative. If Trump were to lose and then lose the Senate, you would have a 6-3 there. But then the Senate would basically never go Republican again, because you would have a majority. It's like California. There's no way California is going to elect a Republican senator. There's no way New York. There's probably no way that pick up one of the most conservative states. Some of them are just entrenched. So if they would gain those territories, they talk about stacking the court, increasing that. That's just scary stuff. Doing away with the Electoral College, now that hits home for me, and everybody's perspective goes back to their individualism. I'm a Midwest kid, so basically you have the East Coast and West Coast telling everybody in the middle, hey, you don't count because we have more people in our state. So if you do away with the Electoral College, those are big deals. Those are massive, massive changes. And I would say go west, young man, and I would run for the hills.
Are you saying that you hate New Yorkers?
No, but I am.
They don't give a shit about us in the West, in the Midwest,
or in the Midwest.
Yeah,
no, I don't. We joke about that. It's like, man, I feel bad for you on when you get fired up, and everybody does about their hometown, and that's great. But no, I don't think, and this is going to sound a lot worse than what I actually mean. So I don't have the right vocabulary, but I don't necessarily think it's a terrible thing that you're so divided in one sense. Like, it's okay for me to be favorable towards a small town because I'm from there and I had a great growing up. That doesn't mean I think the city is stupid, but it's also like I would be fine if most city dwellers, go through one stoplight towns and think, what the hell does this even exist for? And that's okay. Like, I wouldn't take that as an insult. But when it comes to voting, like, well, your vote don't mean any more than mine. And just because you guys live in a city doesn't mean you should pick them versus somebody that doesn't, or some country folk or whoever.
No, it is interesting. And I want to thank both of you guys for coming on. And I wanted to do this segment because, one, it's going to really relate to your portfolio of what's going to happen here. It was an interesting conversation, but there's so much hate out there. And you can no longer express your opinions without losing friends, or even sometimes losing your business these days, losing credibility, everything, your reputation. But everyone should be able to express their opinions, even though there's things I disagree and agree on, even with people within, my job. At the end of the day, be like Ginsburg and Scalia, where, man, it doesn't get more opposite than that. Yet, you bust each other's balls about their opinions. We all get along. That's the way that's how you get better, right? By hearing those criticisms. But for my business, Curzio Research, I always hire people with strong opinions. I never want anyone to kiss my ass. I want to hear, even my research, and you guys know from following me so long, I always want to hear the other side. And I want to hear why you don't like my idea, because it could lead to something that could change my mind. There's nothing more powerful than changing your mind on a topic you felt so strong about, right? That's incredibly powerful. You're like, wow, wait a minute, this guy has a point. Let me look more into it. At the end of the day, it's going to save me. It's going to save my subscribers. But that's how you get better. That's how you achieve perfection, by listening to both sides, by listening to the criticism. And we're in a world right now where I have a lot of Democratic friends that are cool. I just don't agree with some of their policies. They don't agree with some, but to the point where it's hate. And, I've lost friends, some friends. That just have such strong opinions, and it's so crazy. And it's like, man, what the hell are we doing out there? But I'm hoping this change. I don't think it's going to change. Maybe it'll change after the election. It'll die down a little bit. But right now, with the emotions and everything, just seeing what's going on, to the point where you talk about impeachment there's a million reasons to hate Trump. There's a million reasons to go after the guy. I get so many reasons to go after him. He's doing what every single president would do in his shoes right now. And he's doing it based on law, the Constitution. And like I said, it's one of the most presidential things that he's doing in his whole entire term so far. And I would say that for any president, that's what he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He's doing it by law. The Democrats would do it. The Republicans would do it. Every president would do it. And just the fact that you're going to throw everything, you could disagree and yell, but impeachment, changing, adding more states. Holy cow, honoring the last wishes of someone that's dying that they don't really care about. It's pretty crazy out there. So really great stuff. And I want to transition here into my interview with Andrew Horowitz, disciplined investor. He's also going to talk about how the election is going to impact your portfolio. I'm going to come back to you after this as well, just to discuss a few more points of how to set up your portfolio and why politics matters, because it does matter to your portfolio. So Andrew's also going to share 2 picks with you, so pay attention. He's had some big winners for our Dollar Stock Club portfolio. That's where I track my guest picks, that some of them you'll hear, and some of them, I talked to these guys before and after, and we'll share ideas and everything. So I put some of those in the Dollar Stock Club portfolio, which has been doing very, very well, good track record, but a lot of home runs from Andrew, and he's going to share 2 picks. One of them is a pretty crazy short, which I think, but it's going to be interesting. And let's get to that interview right now. Andrew Horowitz, thanks so much for coming back on Wall Street Unplugged.
Hey, thanks for having me, Frank. Appreciate it.
Well, let's start right at the beginning with track record, because we're two people in this business that believe in accountability. Even when I have winners, you highlight them on your podcast. When I have losers, like I had GE a couple of years ago, I came on to explain, like, I'm a big believer in accountability, whether you're right or wrong. And I want to just give you credit because, we pay attention to this now, everyone that we put in front of people, for their picks. And one of the picks you gave us was Train Technologies on July 2nd, last time you were on. And that's up 32%, easily outperforming the market. So really, really good job on that. You know what they say, a broken clock is right twice a day. So,
yeah, well, yeah, that's it. Let's stop there. The record is good at 1 for 1.
But I just wanted to highlight, seriously, nice job on that. So I love what my listeners make money. But let's go through what we always go through when we do this, right? We've been doing this for so long. You have a podcast just as long as me, a little bit longer. Probably the longest running podcast in the financial industry, if I had to guess, at least one of them.
They call the OG of podcasts in the financial area.
Think about how many years?
Back to 2007. Wow. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? I never thought the industry of podcasts would be like it is today, right?
And now everybody has a podcast.
Yeah, everybody. It's like common. It's yeah. I'm like, hey, I got a podcast. Like, me too. I was like, yeah, I got one for 13 years.
Right. Back then it was like, hey, I'm doing a podcast. What's a podcast? Right. I mean, that was kind of what the thought was back then, but it's really expanded. I mean, and we talked about that Amazon now has a whole podcasting network. We got Spotify popping up with a real move into that area as well, and other companies that are really pressing that whole thing. And obviously there's, incredible amount of talent that has really come into this. And that's, a lot of it is back to the same story we talk about all the time, Frank, is what's really pushing all this, and it's technology, right? It's the ability to shrink down the required technical components of what you need to actually make this happen. Because back then, I listened to some of the stuff back in 2007 and 2008. It sounded awful. And it was really difficult to do. And you had to worry about like, okay, well, the file size can't be too big because people can't download it. Now you can pop up, a 4 gig video up to YouTube, and it's ready within a couple of hours after it processes into high def. And it's available for everybody to look at infinitum.
It is pretty incredible. I mean, for me, it's never lost on me the global impact of how many people globally, because it's on iTunes. So, it's just one of the platforms that we're on and you're on, but I get emails all over the world, the world. And it's really helped me tremendously in places where, how the media is, almost every media has an agenda, whatever side you're on. I won't get into that part, but it's nice to know for getting information from the sources and just people that live, boots on the ground across the world. And I can't tell you, I would say about 20% of listeners are outside the U.S. And, it's pretty incredible to say, wow, you listen to me? What are you, crazy? Like, where are you?
I got people from all of Asia that write me, and Australia and South Africa. So it is really cool that it's so easily accessible these days. And that's good for us, too, in our business, right? I mean, as you were saying, it's boots on the ground, but it's also the information is much different today to gather. Whereas back, 20 years ago, you'd have to go to the newspapers, the dailies, and do your research. That was really, or the corporate reports, of course. But, to get any kind of information, now it's just, type in a symbol, and there's 25 different ways from Sunday to get information on whatever you want. So it's been pretty good. And that is exactly really what's been driving the markets these days, right? Same thing. It's just this whole technology revolution and a renaissance, if you will, has been really condensed down because it's due to necessity in times where we have lockdowns and stay-at-home orders. And, we've seen companies after companies come up with new solutions to make life relatively easy to continue working, which, we all got to do something, right?
It's true. I talked about this on the last podcast in my opening, how this is a behavioral change. Like you don't really total sales. Again, when you look at total retail sales, which include gasoline and everything, online e-commerce only accounted 11% of total sales. And that was last year. This year, it's already up to 16%, which is a drastically game-changing move in that statistic. But it just shows you how much growth it has going forward. And you don't realize how many people weren't on Amazon when, everybody knew about Amazon. But now how many people talk about, I got packages all over my house. I didn't know I could get towels and whatever, and just, milk delivered to my door next day. And, when you're forcing someone into doing something a better way, and they're like, all right, now that it's resulting in so many of these online businesses, because I want to talk to you about that. We're going to talk about the overall markets, but we could just get right in, since it's a good segue, is when I'm looking at these technology companies and people talk about valuations and how crazy they are, they're right. The valuations are crazy, but you can't deny the massive growth numbers these companies are putting up in certain sectors where, tech, biotech, e-commerce, right? I mean, you see numbers for Amazon, Walmart, Zoom, Microsoft, companies in the auto and housing sectors. I mean, did you see AutoZone's numbers today? Yes, it's pulling back a little bit, but it's at near its all-time high. Toll Brothers, I mean, the numbers were amazing. Again, a stock that ran up tremendously and pulled back a little bit, but then the numbers these guys are putting up, if you're in the right industry at the right time, are amazing. Is that going to continue? Is it already played out? I mean, is smart? What do you expect here?
That's a great question, because it all, I think, is going to be based on, I mean, this is obvious, what the future holds. I mean, all right, let's just state that point. But are we going to have a change in our habits so dramatically and drastically that we will continue to do what we've done? Listen, I've changed my habits. It's been Christmas in my office over the last 5 years, every single day. I mean, there are packages delivered always, because it makes it so easy through an Amazon or an Office Depot, whatever it is. If I need paper clips, I don't think about, I put it on the list, and next time I get out there, I'm like, click, free delivery, $3.50 pack of paper clips comes the next day, or ink. The old days of having to go out and do this stuff, whereas today it's so much easier. So I think there is the continuation of the retail boom, which is good for online, and those, more importantly, not only that have the product, but make the process easy for the individual, for the user, and the experience for the user to be one that's just click, 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 done, right? Like Amazon has mastered. On the other hand, you look at the places like malls as the other side of the equation, or some of those big box retailers that didn't have their act together to begin with for years, was having a lot of problem to begin with what was going on. But now they just were overrun by the online process, especially once people realize that there is free returns. That's the big issue, right? If I don't have free returns, I can't get 3 or 4 different sneakers to see which one I like. But now I just go shopping online. I'm like, okay, that's a size 11. I'll take that wide. I'll take the size 10.5 in this one. And
do you do that? You buy like 4 pairs and then send
Yes.
3 back? My wife does that. It drives me crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
Why not? I mean, it's so easy.
And Amazon has that separates themselves from everybody. It's not like the Amazon show here. It sounds like we just talked, but I mean, we got plastic cups delivered, which, just on schedule, and they came like all messed up or whatever. They were just like sticking together. And we said, hey, they sent us like 2 for free the next day. It wasn't even like they questioned anything. They just send it and they see you're a good customer. It's just, it's really cool to get that kind of service too. I mean,
there's a problem with this also, because it does hurt some businesses that need to keep up with this. Fortunately, Amazon's not just Amazon retail, it's AWS. They have a lot of other components. I mean, I just bought some shirts from a company called Roosevelt, RSVLTS, and they have some crazy, crazy shirts. Okay. There was a couple that I really liked for like backyard barbecuing. You'll see the shirts. If you look at them, you're like, oh, that's a backyard barbecue shirt. You know what I mean? You got to have a beer in one hand and a spatula in the other. And I got the size in, and it was too small. I got another size, it was too large. I just took theirs, tried it on, sent it back, and it's all free. So that's got to cost them a little bit on the bottom line. But it's good for certain companies, and clearly we saw the numbers from FedEx and UPS and other delivery. I mean, there is a lot in there, but I still question whether or not we're going to want to go back to the days where we can actually, browse. For example, store like Bed Bath & Beyond, right? Now, you can get a lemon squeezer, or you can get a knife from any online at Bed Bath & Beyond for that matter, or Walmart, depending on what the quality you want, what you want. But there's something about going and saying, that lemon squeezer, it's plastic, and I don't know if it's going to, let me kind of feel it and touch it and see what the story is. I prefer to get the metal one. Or that knife, you know what? I only like the handle, the way I hold it in my hand. Now, you could do that by going back and forth. But if somewhere has a selection of things, while they have the carrying cost for that inventory, it still has a little bit of appeal for the shopping experience. And there is, I don't necessarily think that's ever going to go away entirely. But some businesses should, like the automobile industry. I've talked about this for years. The floor planning model, where they have thousands of cars on the lot, and they're paying while some of the companies themselves are paying back the individual owners at the various franchises. Some of the costs for carrying the cars. It's just no reason to be doing that anymore when you can have an environment where you have a just-in-time process of delivery, and what's happening with AI involved in your ordering process. And look what Tesla did. Tesla, you go there, they have like 4 cars. You can look at them, or whatever it is, 5 cars, whatever the number is. But there's not much going on. They have a little storefront. There's not a lot of
that's forced. That's not even their choice. They just won't let them, like the car company, they said, third-party dealerships for them. So they said, okay, well, we have to open up our own stores, basically.
But that's a beautiful model. That's what they do in Europe. That's what they do a lot of around in Europe. You don't see these gigantic. I mean, where else other than America do you see the opportunity to just have 25 acres worth of cars? It just doesn't exist.
Sure.
So
it's definitely true. But it's interesting. Like you said, there's some industries that are thriving. We know there's some that aren't, whether it's gyms, whether it's travel companies, even though some of them are coming back. Let's talk about everything as a whole, because everyone's so focused about short term. We've seen since September, the market has come down. People are nervous. It's up tremendously, right? To put things in perspective, up tremendously, right? So the pullback, I think, is healthy. But when I look at the underlying conditions, what the Fed said, basically, I was like, they're going to implement yield curve control, which they basically did, right? So they said, except they did it on short term instead of long term. But if rates go high, they're going to implement it and put a cap on long term. But they said we're going to keep short term rates at 0 for three years. I mean, that it automatically, what that does to the it forces money into the market, right? There's no place you could generate income. It's more people going to be taking out loans, interest rates lower. It's a stimulant to the economy that's going to be there. So for me, when I look at pullbacks, I'm not saying that, hey, the market's going to come back, you don't have to worry, but I feel like I could always find opportunities when I see pullbacks like this, because the underlying conditions, not just the Fed itself, but we have interest rate policy, right? We're talking about, fiscal policy as well, because the separation between Main Street and Wall Street is going to get wider and wider, that they're going to continue, eventually, the politicians, throwing more money at this, the amount of money flooding the markets, COVID getting better and better in terms of statistics, where eventually they'll go away, maybe not 100%, but it just seems like the underlying factors, the long-term drivers are still in place for positive results in the stock market.
I think there was 2 things, talk about the Fed for a second. I think there was 2 ways to look at what the Fed was saying. And one was, okay, hey, you know what? We're going to go from 2022 and we're going to expand our zero interest rate program, the ZIRP, to 2023, right? So you're like, wow, that's great. And so the markets react pretty positively on that news. On the other side of that is this. Wait a second. I thought the recovery was going to be happening a little bit faster. There was a lot of discussion about V-shape, or maybe a check mark, or at least, a kind of a reasonable recovery over a year or so. And all of a sudden, they're really concerned and stretching out their zero interest rate policy to 2023. What do they know that we don't know? The second thing the Fed did was, Powell was a little weird in this last discussion, where he talked about, well, we're going to we believe we can get our interest rates, inflation rate back to 2% through our inflation averaging process and letting the economy run a little hot, and the growth rate up there. But we're not necessarily going to do anything different right now. It's kind of like sitting in a car and saying, hey, I'm going to 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, sitting there and not putting your foot on the gas pedal, just willing the car to go faster. So there was no real structural change in their last discussion about how they were going to get to this point in the future. But the other thing I'll mention, Frank, is that there's something that's kind of underneath the surface that I really believe is happening, and that's inflation. Now, while they may not be actually increasing rates, because they said so, right? They said till 2023, that's what it's going to be. The problem is the inflation averaging discussion, which is something that we knew about, they were talking about a year and a half ago. And they implemented this because they know they want the markets to be set for the fact that there is inflation coming. And as such, they don't want the markets to believe they're going to be immediately raising rates in order to combat this. The only reason that they're utilizing this inflation averaging is not because they really want to make up for something. It's so that they don't spook the markets, because inflation is coming. I don't think there's any question about that. So now you have to reset. You have to reset yourself. Okay, well, what does that mean for certain areas of the market?
Yeah, and for those of you who think, we have an inflation for forever.
Forever.
Right? It seems like.
Forever.
But, people compare this to past stimuluses, and if we look at the credit crisis, we have to remember this is different. This is very, very different, where, you're looking at, first of all, the amount of money we're looking at less than $500 billion when all is said and done for TARP, but that went directly to the banks, right? That went directly to the banks. It's differently, or they could lend it to whoever they want to, and we all know what happened. They got bigger and bigger and bigger. The money that's being delivered right now, which is 12, 13x just right now, bigger than TARP, right? We're talking trillions and trillions, over $6 trillion. It's going directly to they're getting checks in the mail. I mean, this is money going directly to them, bypassing the economy, bypassing me working, just going from the government to the actual person. And, I remember, I think it was last month and the month before when I looked at the statistics. I look every single month, but it was funny to see, personal income lower, but personal spending higher.
Yeah. Right.
Because that is going to cause inflation. It's just a matter of time. And it's funny, I got the same thing where they're like, well, 2% is that rate, but if it goes high, like they keep mentioning it, like, because they love to prepare and they love to let everyone know up front. This way it doesn't come out of nowhere. But I agree with you. And let's say if we get inflation and, we go above the 2% threshold, we see stocks do well early on in an inflationary environment. Do you switch portfolios? Or you allocation wise? What are you looking to do to set up where we have inflation?
You would think that you would have to go for more of the away from, in theory, you'd go away from your growth orientation once you get into that mode, into more of the value. I mean, you'd think that in an inflationary environment, you should see a yield curve that starts to spread out a little bit more. You'd think. And then banks should do well. The banks are horrible. I mean, Wells Fargo down 55% this year. Bank of America down 31%. I mean, Morgan Stanley, Goldman, a little bit better because they have obviously trading. But those banks that are front facing to the consumer and that have very little trading components to them, or investment banking for that matter, not doing well at all. So, is that one area that you would want to look at? And I think that you have to right now, and I heard a really interesting discussion yesterday, it's all about a rate environment. What do the rates mean? What areas will do well? Should you be in long-term bonds right now? Or do you have the chance to say, hey, you know what, maybe I should shorten those maturities? We shortened our maturities a year ago, 2 years ago. We've been kind of shortening up our maturities in all of our bond components for the last couple of years, thinking that, how much lower are rates going to go? Yeah, they've gone lower, but how much more am I going to squeeze out of the total return versus just the yield? And it makes sense to be, I think, on the shorter side of the yield curve right now. The other problem is, and I'll tell you this is an observation, and it's something that we implemented, because there is a valuation issue that you get to the end of the possible stretching of multiples. And what happened in the beginning of this year, that multiples before all this COVID, multiples were kind of, a little bit weird, right? Remember that before the start of this year, we started seeing that big stretch out. We came into this year light on equities in our long short strategy, the TDI managed growth strategy. We had a 38% position in equities. 3 months later, I found this really interesting. After the whole drop of the markets and all that, our screening strategy, which we don't change, we had a 67% equity allocation. Okay, which I was like, how's that going to work through all this, right? But it worked out really well. Now, September 1st, what was interesting was that same exact screening process, which we're looking for growth of earnings, growth of revenue, high ROE. We're looking at margin expansion, a whole host of fundamental data. On September 1st, this is really, we'll call it lucky. Well, the clock was right twice, right? So this is my second time. Okay. So, on September 1st, we dropped that equity allocation to 27% because we could not find names that met the criteria because they were so out of range, or not even on a valuation standpoint, we couldn't find the growth. across the board that met
And
with.
you're right. There's some companies that, I mean, if you look at like the Zooms, I'll throw in there, Livonga Health, if I'm saying that right, but there's companies in there that are seeing tremendous growth, but Tesla's not really seeing the growth to drive that stock price. It's
Right.
there are companies out there
weird.
that yeah, I agree with you 100%. Good. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is that I thought it was really interesting that the fundamentals are not playing out now, which kind of makes sense. We're checking on a quarter-over-quarter basis from last year to this year, et cetera. And what happens is we expand and contract the core equity exposure dependent on all this. So what's interesting, our core equity is down, let's say 1% now because we only have 27% versus the S&P was down, 7.5 in September already. So my theory is right now that we have to be very careful because we're walking through a little bit of a minefield. That doesn't mean don't be invested, right? So I'm never totally bearish or totally bullish. It's kind of like, okay, we're kind of in the middle all the time. I like to kind of play both sides to a degree. And when we look at our equity allocation, we have a little bit of a slant in our other portfolios towards value, which has not been working out. However, in September, you'll notice that this big train wreck that hit the growth, which was probably precipitated by that whale trade, once again, and these are the problems where we're seeing asymmetrical bulging of that balloon. It's not necessarily in all areas. We're seeing a big bulge in real estate, right? But that's in single family homes in rural areas. But we're seeing that commercial real estate and we're seeing that multifamily homes problematic. You're seeing that certain technology that is front facing to the consumer, that is oriented towards cloud, is doing really well. And then you have other areas of the market, like banks or like leisure and travel, not doing so well. So it's kind of like this. If you think about a balloon, it's kind of like a blowing up. So it's not a balloon or a bubble that we're in right now. It's like a blown up latex glove. Okay, where we have certain areas. You follow what I'm saying? Certain areas are kind of like way out of line, where other areas are kind of like didn't get that whole pop from all this.
Yeah. And you know what? Let's get into because I know you love giving picks and usually send me a couple of them before and say, hey, I like, these are a couple of picks I like or I want to short. And I want to get to both to a few of them because they're interesting. The first one is I know no one's going to take your advice on this because it's, a big company name.
Right.
I told people to buy Amazon like 900 and people are like, oh, I said, I know, listen, it's not because, I know you pay me to recommend stocks that you really don't know about, but when I looked at everything cloud related outside of Microsoft, that was the best company by a mile. And, we were able to have great gains on it, but you like Microsoft here, right?
I mean, Microsoft is kind of like this. I mean, first of all, the management is great, right? Compared to what it was years ago. It's really well positioned from the work from home. It's cloud. It's got gaming. It bought a company this week to really shore up their gaming. The new Xbox is coming out, and the Xbox S, I believe it's called. Thank you for not calling it Xbox Plus, by the way. Every company is like Apple Plus or this Plus, Apple News Plus. That's what they pay millions of dollars to their advertising company to come up with a new name for a new service, and they say just put a plus on it. So Wall Street Unplugged Plus. So Microsoft is a great recovery play. I think the balance sheet is it's pristine. They're doing everything right across the board. The problem you may have is a little bit of a situation if unemployment stays up for a long period of time. Possibly they'll lose some of their income with relation to the seats that they sell in terms of either Office or Windows, but that is just a part of the whole process. So Microsoft, I mean, I can't really find a hole except from a little bit maybe evaluation, but long term I just don't see a hole there, unless we come up with some totally different OS and get away from Microsoft. But we've tried, it's just not happening. I mean, I don't know. Do you see any holes there?
No, I don't see any holes there. I mean, it's Microsoft, Amazon, Google. I mean, these companies are so large, so big, controlling everything. I mean, it's out of control right now, and you can't stop it. I mean, it's funny where, Trump's been angry about them. They're suppressing certain information, not others, whatever, so both sides could get a little pissed off. But even if you're looking to break up these companies, they're going to be so much bigger. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens to some of these, especially with some of the things that, they'll just suppress things on one side, not the other. And It's interesting because it's a free speech platform and you don't want, negative stuff on it, or just people lying, but it's hard to filter that out. You filter out one way, you got to filter out, but it's, we know technology is really back in Biden here, right? We all know that. But this should, I think the political wise, what the risk that they're running is if Trump does win, I think he might be that pissed to really, have the Justice Department go after these guys to really try to break them up. I mean, I think they're great buys if you do that, but they're just so huge and so big and know everything. There's a great show. There's a great documentary on Netflix about this, about the whole thing. I forgot what it's called, but just how they actually track you out. They know exactly what you're going to do, and they're guiding you.
You're talking about the Social Network or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's called Social Network.
Yeah, I started watching halfway through. I got my hair in the back of my neck was standing up. I'm like,
you watched it, you're going to be like things but and they have real people on there who work in some of the biggest companies in the world that no longer work for them. I mean, this isn't just people, but you'll see how they completely control you. They know everything about you. They know what you're going to do, and they steer you towards whatever direction they want. And it's, as big as they are, it's pretty crazy.
But Microsoft's a little bit different. Yeah, I think Microsoft has a lot of that, and they may look to break it up. But again, if Microsoft, the breakup value, if you look at, splitting off what are you going to split off? You're going to split off the cloud.
You're going to be able to break off gaming, social media that then Microsoft or Amazon I don't see because they're just diversified enough. Yeah,
exactly. I think Microsoft's a good, interesting play long term, and it's one of those plays that right now I feel comfortable because there is the potential for so much volatility, and there is potential for like you said, election or political risk in some of the names out there and what's happening. And also we have, I know you've been all over this whole virus thing about, hey, let's get them back to school and these numbers are wrong and all that. I'm not going to argue with you about it, Frank. I can just tell you that, listen, we're seeing lockdowns in the UK. We're seeing lockdowns in Israel. I don't know how that relates to the presidential trying to get Trump out of office, but nonetheless, there's something going on around the world. This thing is not over yet. It's just not over. And
I don't think it's over. I just think
it's maybe blown up to a bit for some things, but you know what? In some regards, people are not taking it seriously on the other side. I mean, there's kind of like both sides, right? The craziness that we see from some media, but the kind of I'm not wearing a mask no matter what, which is just rude.
There's such a big medium there, isn't it? Like, we understand that more than 90% of these deaths occurred with people who are over 65 years old who had underlying conditions. We know that. It's fact. We know if you're under 15 years old, you have a better chance of dying in a car accident than your kids getting COVID and dying just from COVID without any underlying conditions, right? These are the facts that are out there. But everyone's different. But we're all seeing the statistics, but it's not like you don't have to wear a mask or, the extreme, you can't go outside. And in extreme, any media site wants to be extreme because you're going to watch it, putting fear into you or just whatever it is. But, for me, wearing a mask, I don't wear it for me. I'm not worried about catching it. I don't have any underlying conditions. But I wear a mask because I know that older people are at risk. They are at risk. And if I see someone walking towards me, like in a store and I have a mask, if they're older, I'll go to a different aisle because just to make them feel comfortable, because they are at serious risk of this. And the people who are making the policy decisions are all over 70 years old who are in that danger zone making these policy decisions when, the school and the kids and the infections are going crazy and 1,000 people in Alabama got infected. There was none of them went to the hospital. None of them. And
right. I get it. But what I'm saying, if you're comparing it to the car accidents and the car, the only thing I will tell you is when you're in a car, you're not going to necessarily purposefully go down and drive the wrong side of the street. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I think it's like when people are purposefully not doing the things that, could prevent some of this. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And I agree with that, too. I mean, we have to be smart about it. We can't just no masks. No. But, I just think, lockdowns are insane. In Europe, I'm seeing not locking down, but have restrictions. They're placing, they're closing early in some places and lowering the restrictions from 50 to 30%, whatever it is, but not full lockdowns. But I'd like to see
they are saying they encourage people to work from home now. That was today.
Oh, they encourage people to work from home.
Yep.
Yeah,
Boris Johnson saying, hey, we're going to close this down. Schools stay open. Non-essential workers, please start working from home. So all I'm saying is there's some weirdness going on. And whether it's a second wave or whether it's not a second wave, it's a first wave, it's a discontinuation. It's not that I don't really care. Here's what I do care about. That it is affecting the psychology of the individual.
Exactly. Just like a vaccine will, even though I think people will be crazy to take it under 40, but that's going to change the sentiment, especially if older people, that we have an actual vaccine that hopefully is 100% safe and proven to be safe before they release it.
Exactly.
All right, so let's get to your next pick, too, because it's short, and it's a short that Wayfair And I've seen people try to short it, including one of our analysts here. Definitely, they did it a good way. They didn't short it. They actually bought puts on it, so they only lost the money put in. But
they still, but not as much.
yeah, so Wayfair is just, I mean, it's a company that goes tremendously high. I actually started using them because we were looking for furniture, and it was a million times better experience than anyone else that I used, because it was the first time I've ever used them. I didn't end up buying anything, though, but it was great in terms of the service. I just found something on a different site that was a little bit better, but I was just interested to see it, and it was pretty good. Like just the emails, the follow-ups, the funnels and stuff like that.
Yep. They're very good at that. Here's a couple of things that most of their stuff is made not in the US, which I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I'm just saying quality of most of the merchandise is pretty low. They do. In fact, you could find the same exact pieces on other places cheaper. So you got to say, well, that lends itself to the margin of what Wayfair is making on it. I've gotten many things like little things like planters and things. Almost every single time I had to send it back. Something's chipped. It's not what was, it doesn't look, I ordered something that was white. It came in like beige, almost every time. And they'll do like, hey, keep that. We'll send you another one. So here's the thing. I just don't believe this in the sustainability of the price. I think a lot of that was due to the fact that people were rushing when we had the stay-at-home orders, when we had the lockdowns. We're like, okay, I have a laptop. That's fine for a few days. I can put it on my lap in my chair and I can work and I could sit in bed and do it. But wait a minute, I may be here for how long? And a lot of people went out and started to set up small offices in their homes, as well as, buying desks and things like that. But also saying, you know what, all right, if I'm going to be in my house, maybe I should get a new couch, maybe something a little bit. Now, I think some of that day has passed a little bit, especially if we're not going to have necessarily these lockdowns. Prices up about 300% since January 2020. It's a low cost and, again, a questionable quality of goods. They're still running at an operating loss annually. They're 185 times forward PE at this point. And, what's the barrier to entry on this? I don't know. Maybe they have products from everywhere. Do we see other companies getting into this game? Possibly. We've even seen companies that are in the high-end space, like RH or Restoration Hardware, do extremely well in this. But I just don't see that if we are on the tail end of all this, how this is a sustainable model of growth at any price, right? At 185 times forward, losing money on a operating basis. I just don't get it.
You know what's funny though? I don't get it either. But I could say this, and I don't get it. Like I didn't have Wayfair. I didn't get the move in Zoom. But I do know that companies are going to trade at a huge premium for growth, and if they continue blowing out those numbers on the growth, and like Zoom, I've never seen growth like that in any company ever within a year stretch. And of course, it took a pandemic, everybody coming home, but those numbers, whatever, 200 million users from like a million, whatever. It's just like whoa. Right. But when I look at Wayfair, the only thing that worries me here is you're right, 185 times forward PE. I looked at this at 70 times, 100 times, 120 times, and I said, and it's now at 185 times, which guys means the stock keeps going up and up and up. So I don't know if I'm willing to, even no matter what the valuation is, to say it's at a certain valuation that now you have to worry, because I would think that valuation was 70x, 100x, it's 185x, right? So there's got to be that, like you said, has this been, just drawn out long enough where we're getting to that tail end, or, but for me, when I don't look at it as valuation, because anyone that tried to short these things, evaluation has been so wrong the whole entire time.
That's just one part of it. It's just one part. They're still running at an operating loss. Why are they still losing money on an operating basis? And why is it that they can't, with all the cheap products they have right now? They may also run into supply issues depending on also who's the next president and how much the screws we tighten on China and other countries around the world, tariffs that go into play on this. I think it was really well set up for the pandemic idea of, okay, what could really do well? Well, I got to have a computer. So Dell and those companies did really well, and Microsoft and Apple from all the sales of the phones and the laptops, et cetera. And then, I need to sit somewhere. Okay, I got desks and I'll do something to my house because I'm not going out. All I'm saying is if we get that vaccine, if we get something where people are going to be like, okay, you know what? Enough of this. I mean, do you think RV sales are going to continue to be crazy like they are forever?
It depends, because you know what? Even with a vaccine, the market's going to be different for restaurants. Who goes to restaurants the most? I would say, out of the demographic, it's going to be 60 and over, like to go to restaurants. They
talking about the millennials. They don't know how to cook. Yeah. What are you talking about? Seriously.
I mean, the expensive restaurants that I see in the city when people go out, it's usually an older clientele. You know, they like to go out on Fridays and Saturdays, retired couples. It's whatever retirees like to do. If it's cruises or whatever, it's are they actually going to do, even with a vaccine? Remember, these are the people that really have to worry. I mean, those are statistics are telling us.
I don't think the older people are buying this furniture. I think it's a younger crowd. It's cheaper. I think it's, again, listen, this may go along with, it is possible that it will continue going along with the new home sales and all that, where people are moving out of an apartment in New York that has 420 square feet, where they have, one couch, one bed, and a small a little table with 4 seats. Whereas they go into a house, they're gonna have to refurnish, a whole different situation than moving out to Jersey or something like that, right? So that may be something, but it just appears to me that this is the poster child, like Zoom is, the poster child of the potential pandemic stay at home. And once that kind of rolls, I just don't know if we're going to be willing to pay that much up for this kind of name, especially when they are having such a extraordinary expense related to getting everything out there at this point. I don't know.
And really quick, I want you to go before we go here, because we're running, I just want to make sure we get this in. But you talk about a couple of fundamental things and operating losses and P. I mean, a lot has to do with technicals. You look at technicals a lot. Yep. I'm sure you're looking at technicals here. Like that's what I was getting to, where you look at valuation. Valuation has not been something that you could look at and say, now it's time to short. So I'm sure, but if you're looking at charts, you may have seen something combined with this that you're saying, when I combine everything together, this is a great short. Could you talk?
Yeah. I mean, when I look at the chart right now, I don't have it in front of me, but it kind of engraved in my mind right now. When I look at the chart, there's definitely a level that it came up into, kind of blew out that top end, started to come down with the rest of the market right here. This is kind of a hole, we call it, or a fast zone, where we go vertically through price in a quick manner that looks like right now there is that opportunity, and settle back probably about 20% lower from where we are right now. So if you kind of can look at a chart and you can see that, you'll see about 20% lower. Again, I don't have it right in front of me. I think it's about 21% lower. There's kind of a support level there. And I wouldn't be inclined to take it below that point unless something really fundamentally breaks with everything. But you know what? We're going to have also a lot of weak hands that possibly got it on that real big upswing that happened last, month or so. I mean, it's been going up, but that really big move that happened over the last month or so, 2 months. And it just seems to me that on a technical basis, this is very vulnerable. Not a lot of support down from here.
No, I love that. I love that you combine everything. So I mean, we talked about a lot. We talked about ideas, guys. Sometimes it gets lost when we talk about the economy and it's so important just from that, like to us talking about inflation. To me, you're always looking for ideas. I want you to expand it, where sometimes you can be, well, the Fed and the interest rates, but that leads to so many individual stock ideas when you have that outlook. So hopefully that comes across and we're not putting people to sleep, because to me, that's interesting to you. It's interesting. I'm hoping it's interesting to the audience, because it really doesn't matter. But, and we could talk about the economy in a Fed all day. So, yeah. But, Andrew, if someone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about you, how could they do that?
Yeah, you go over to disciplinedinvestor.com. That's one place where we have all the information about our various strategies and what we do, from Investology to the long short strategy with the TDI managed growth strategy, to our global allocations, of course, the podcast on all fine podcast networks. You can find that as well as the Disciplined Investor. Just look me up online. Just click it into any well, everybody uses Google, nothing else. I mean, Dogpile, whatever it is out there these days. I still
see a picture up there from like 20 years ago. You look good.
Of course. Why would I put anything else up?
you lost weight. You look good. What are you talking
about? Yeah, so the disciplinedinvestor.com.
All right, great stuff, buddies. Always love having you on. Everybody loves you. You always provide great ideas. Your performance track record has been great the last few times you were on, man. So I really, really appreciate that. And as always, open invitation, man. So hopefully,
all right. Appreciate it. Let's keep it up. Thanks.
Okay, it's great stuff from Andrew. Love having him on. Always shares ideas. We go everywhere. And I want to hear from you, Curzio.com, especially that one segment on politics. I mean, look, it's for me, when I look at this, especially what I care about, I don't care what party you are. What I care about is making you money. That's all I care about, right? And I think everyone listens to the podcast understands that. And I need to understand COVID. It helped me get out of the market and tell you guys, listen, you got to really be careful. We sold out a lot of positions. I'm not saying to pat myself on the back. I highlight my losers all the time more than my winners, because I always, that's where the biggest lessons are learned. But I didn't see one other person tell you to get out of the market in February, because we're going to see market crash was imminent. So understanding COVID stats and when I post them on Twitter and just seeing the negative comments come in every time I'm posting something positive, which should be great. I don't want to rush a vaccine to the market before the election. That's bullshit. But we all need a vaccine. It's really going to help the older population. It's sentiment-wise. Hey, we have something that can really help us. That's good news for everybody. And you have to sometimes put these things aside and difference of opinions. And listen, you can say, Frank, I don't agree with you. I always say that in my research. I'm like, hey, if you don't agree, if it makes you feel better, calling me an asshole, calling me whatever, tell me why you don't agree with my thesis on something, because I want to hear it. I want to hear it. You may be right. You may be someone engulfed in an industry where I don't work in this industry, but, I research it to death. You'll see my videos, my research videos, and all my newsletters, how much research I put into these stocks and teach you what I'm looking at to help you guys out outside of the Curzio Research picks and become great investors. But that's, we're about here. And a quick story about Greg is, this is the first time he was on a podcast and you heard from him. I love the strong opinions. So I'll forward all the emails to him. He's great. But Greg is a very, very close friend, one of my best friends. And he launched my first package at Stansberry. It was a natural gas package, did very, very well, launched his first package. He wrote the first package for me for Small Stock Specialist. And, that launched the product, and it was a successful launch. So, we became close, and usually you do that with good copywriters, right, who market your products and write these copy packages and make it exciting, and I always thought he was the best in the entire industry. So in every company, you kind of get attached to certain copywriters, and I got along with a lot of good ones, but Greg was the one that always went to different places with me and, like boots on the ground, and he came with me. This way, he listened to the conversations. We bought film crews with us when we toured we went to Vancouver, to one of the largest natural gas engine providers. We had access to the whole entire company, CEO, CFO, sampled everything. It was cool. Jumped in the trucks, just by powered by natural gas. And that was in Vancouver. We went to the Bakken in North Dakota together. And, you spend time and just it's funny when you talk about it, you're having drinks afterwards and bullshit, and you get close with people. But he sees me in there and he understands. So he's able to write a package much better that's true to me compared to just writing something that's going to sell, which is bullshit, which sometimes we see with our copy package. But when I left, well, not when I left Stansberry, when Stansberry let me go, he was one of the first to call me and say, hey, man, I'm really sorry and whatever. And then when I started my own business, we just launched our first package. And he said, look, I'm looking to make a move. I said, all right, let me know what's going on. I'll try to put something together. And he decided to come over to Curzio Research. When he came over, and you're coming over from one of the biggest and the best. And for him to take that leap over here, and he's just starting a family, and now he has, more kids, twins and everything. It was a huge, huge leap of faith. I was surprised he actually did it. I mean, again, even now where we're generating more revenue, millions of revenue, we're still a dot in the radar in terms of the publishing industry. That's just one of our, numerous growth markets we have right now, which is great for our company. But just to see that is really special, And a lot of my partners and people who joined me very early on, that's not an easy decision to join a small company. Things are different, especially when you work for a big company and they're spending money, and it doesn't matter if they lose money here. It's different. It's a lot more work. You're doing things outside your scope when it's a small company. Everyone has, more responsibilities. I try to make sure they're doing 80% of what they're good at, but that 20% is going to overlap with, a lot of bullshit that comes along with running a small company and building it up. And, to see how much they trust me, that is a massive, massive, massive driving force for me. Massive. In terms of our security token, we're going to become a publicly traded company in a few weeks. I'm very excited. We did it right. We structured a token right where, we're paying a dividend. We paid a first dividend to our shareholders. Now, any mom and pop investor is going to be able to buy this token on exchange. We're going to give you, details and videos of exactly how to do it. It's not going to be difficult, but you're going to own an equity stake in our company. And that's what I want, because it's the shareholders. You're getting in on the ground floor. We're still really, really small right now. And we're risky. It's basically just a new way to go public that's much cheaper and more favorable for individual investors. I think this industry is going to take off. The fact that we're, pretty much first to launch something like this, you're not going to see a token structure like us where it's very, very close to a stock in terms of compliance and in terms of transparency. There's no security token on the market. But believe me, I analyze all of them, that you're going to see that compared to ours. And it's going to draw a lot of interest in people because it is really set up for the best interest of the shareholders, and it should reflect how big we grow and our growth markets. and the revenue we generate, and earnings we generate. So, I'm really, really excited about that. But the motivation to make this work has a lot to do with employees trusting me, with you guys trusting me, for decades. 102 investors. Think about it, how many things that you invested in. Our 102 investors, every one of them are clients. Every one of them are subscribers. I mean, does it get a better endorsement than that? And I see that personally. Like, these are people that have followed me that said, no, I'm going in. And they invested in a security token at a time when no one even knew what a security token was. Now the industry is really starting to develop, and they trusted me on that. But to do it, I joke around with the first 102 investors. I'm like, you guys are crazy. It's like, to actually do this. But it's really exciting stuff. We worked really, really hard. And I know that anyone else is going to launch security tokens that really do the proper structure. They're going to come through us because it's a very difficult process. It's going to open a door for so many different revenue opportunities, especially for our business where, if it's not consulting fees that we generate through a different division or subsidiary, it's taking a stake in these businesses very early on, that the ones that we like are going to come to us. And that's a way, for them to pay us. So it's going to open up so many opportunities in terms of our company in general, in terms of everyone that's following us, in terms of if you're a subscriber to our Curzio crypto intelligence newsletter, where you're going to see a lot of security token recommendations. There's probably about 14, 15 that you could buy right now. It's going to get bigger and bigger. There's going to be 100 in 6 months from now, and there's going to be thousands 3 to 5 years from now. So it's very early in the industry, but at least we're going to see a lot of these names in the early stages of growth, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm excited about that. So I just want to give you guys a little insight into Greg and joining us and what he's done, and the fact that he took that chance, because I really consider him the best copywriter in the financial industry, and for him to join such a small company, I was really proud of that. And just seeing the team that we built very early on to come here and still be here and be excited, it's nice. But that's the motivation to really get this thing right, and I appreciate all the support. Let me know what you thought about that segment too. I know it was political. I know we were going to get lots of emails, but remember, we should be able to talk politics and not hate each other. We should have strong opinions. It's fun. We all have strong opinions, but not to the point where we hate each other. We don't talk to each other. That's not America. That's not what we do. And at the end of the day, you got to worry about yourself. You got to worry about your portfolio, worry about your family. And that's what I'm here for, to really help you out in terms of that. And hopefully, we've been doing that with our newsletters. We got pretty good performance. Could always be better. I'll never be satisfied. We just recommended a great stock in Curzio Venture Opportunities that if you listen to this right now, you should have it. You should have that issue. So I would say if you listen to this after 6 p.m. on Wednesday and you're a subscriber, you have it. It's a great opportunity, really good name, one of the greatest investors. Acquired a huge stake in the company. It's only a $2.5 billion company, enormous potential. And I'll tease a little bit saying it is in the biotech sector. And you've seen some gains in there, and this is one that hasn't participated and I think could really take off. It's not a COVID play. It's going to be much, much bigger. It's not short-term oriented like that, but very, very excited. It's under the radar name. But I told you guys about yield curve control. A lot of subscribers have come in. I discounted that newsletter by 60% for you. That ends Friday. Curzio Venture is our signature product. We don't discount it by that much, almost ever. 60% discount. But Friday night at midnight, that's it. That offer is over, and you're probably not going to see that offer for a very, very, very long time. Anything close to that offer. So if you're interested, definitely subscribe. The yield curve control part, the Fed actually kind of implemented yield curve control. So yield curve control is capping the rates, like I said earlier. Like for me, interest rates are going to be very, very low. And if they're super low, then it's going to be great for a lot of these small caps. It's going to be great for equities. And instead of capping it long term, and the long term rate on the back end of the curve, it's the front end of the curve. They say, hey, you know what? Next 3 years, we're going to stay low. And if it does on the back end start getting higher, then they'll initiate yield curve control. But the point of it, if interest rates are going to stay low considerably, and you have that time frame, and the Fed comes out and says it, which they did 2023, until we get full employment, which we won't have for a long time because of COVID, it's going to provide a spark to a lot of companies that haven't participated yet. And there's a lot of small cap names that are starting to see huge growth. And it's an opportunity, I think, that can make you a lot of money in small caps. That's when I want to sell my products the most. So if you're interested in Curzio Venture Opportunities, it's fine. We're going to have it for one more week. We kept that open probably for a month. Usually we only keep things open for 2 weeks. And we don't discount all of our products often. But this is one time we do if you want to take advantage. Again, we have that new recommendation. We have 3 new ones that are under our buy up to price that I recommended last week that I think are all going to take off. All great companies, all U.S.-based. A lot of the market has been coming down because COVID cases are surging in Europe, but these are companies that do most of their business in the U.S., small cap, all reported very, very solid quarters and all down from their recent highs because of COVID and haven't participated in this rally. So I'm very, very excited about these names to see huge upside potential, not just in those names, but in small caps in general. Not the whole Russell 2000, but a lot of individual names are coming up on my list that I really, really like, that are growing very, very fast and are still trading at low multiples compared to the market and compared to their peers. So if you're interested in that, you can go to our website. You're going to get a few more emails on if you're on our list. Again, Curzio Venture Opportunities, it's 6% discount. If not, no worries. And again, I want to hear from you. FrankCurzioResearch.com. Let me know what you thought about that segment. I can't wait. It's going to be crazy. But yeah, new format, more people coming in. We're going to have more high-profile guests. It's going to be really cool. Going to be videotaping all this going forward. We have the studio almost completely set up. So really exciting stuff. You'll see a lot of this stuff through our YouTube page if you want to follow us at Frank Curzio, or through our Curzio Research YouTube page, which you'll see a lot of videos and a lot of interviews on there, which will be exclusive to that. So really, really cool stuff. And that's 100% for free, guys. You can sign up for those free, just like this podcast is free. So thank you so much for listening. Really, really appreciate all your support. And I'll see you guys in 7 days. Take care.
The information presented on Wall Street Unplugged is the opinion of its hosts and guests. You should not base your investment decisions solely on this broadcast. Remember, it's your money and your responsibility. Wall Street Unplugged, produced by the Choose Yourself Podcast Network, the leader in podcasts produced to help you choose yourself.